Thank you, everyone. I would request to kindly take your seats. Again, a very warm welcome to all of you. I am Nupura, and on behalf of Civic Data Lab, we would welcome you all for an engaging session on strengthening data and AI collaboratives for economic growth and social good. The last 2 days have been very meaningful conversations aiming towards potential collaborations. But what do these collaborations entail, especially around the context of data and AI? There have been a lot of questions in terms of how do these collaborations will shape further. Is this the collaborations around the shared data infrastructures, shared tools, ethics, or the governance practices altogether? To unpack these questions, we have a great lineup of speakers to share their perspective and their experience on the various aspects of strengthening data and AI collaboratives. A quick walkthrough of today's format of the session. We will have two keynote addresses. After that, we'll have a quick address by Civic Data Lab on one of our initiative called Civic Data Space. Then we will have the first panel, which will be on demystifying data and AI collaboratives, followed by a quick Q&A. The second panel will be on applying data and AI collaboratives for economic growth and social good, again followed by a Q&A. We will only be possible to take two questions from the audience. So I would request anyone who is asking the questions to be more pointed and precise and also be clear to whom you're asking the question as well. So without any delay, we can begin. I would first like to welcome our first keynote address speaker, Ambassador Harry Furway. Ambassador Furway serves as the ambassador at large since September 2025. He was also appointed as the special envoy on AI for the Netherlands. He's a seasoned Dutch diplomat with over 40 years of service for the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the Kingdom of Netherlands. Ambassador, I would request you to please join us for the keynote.
Thank you for your introduction. I always get frightened when I hear service of 40 years. That is a little bit over the top, but it's true. I'm afraid. I hope you all had your morning coffee. It's going to be intense this morning. Thank you very much, and it's a real pleasure to open today's conversation on strengthening data and AI collaboratives for economic growth and social good. We are at a decisive moment. The way we govern, share, and use data and AI today will shape our economic prosperity and social well-being for decades to come. The key question is not whether data and AI will transform our world. They already are. The real question is, will we shape this transformation together, or will fragmentation, mistrust, and missed opportunities define our future? So people say that us, the Dutch, we're direct. So let me be direct and honor that stereotype. Collaboration doesn't happen automatically. It happens when incentives are aligned, when governance is clear, and when participants trust the system. Trust is the foundation of data sharing. Organizations hesitate to share data if they fear risks to privacy, security, or competitive advantage. This is why governance frameworks matter. Instruments like the EU's Data Act and Data Governance Act aren't bureaucratic exercises. They are trust-building tools. They create clear rules, introduce trusted intermediaries, and provide legal certainty. This makes sharing data not only possible, but attractive. But trust alone isn't enough. The European Data Union strategy recognizes that stakeholders participate when they see tangible benefits, new business models, improved public services, environmental impact, and inclusive growth. This is enlightened self-interest at its best. In the Netherlands, we try to put this philosophy into practice. Through our national technology strategy, we invest in strong public-private partnerships. Government companies, research institutions, and civil societies work together to build data and an AI ecosystem that serves society as a whole. For example, the Center of Excellence for Data Sharing and Cloud and the AI Coalition for the Netherlands bring together diverse actors, not to compete, but to co-create. I'll give you another concrete example, GPTNL, a Dutch large language model. GPTNL does not rely on web scrape data of unclear origin. It works with contractual agreements. Data holders such as public institutions, archives, libraries, media organizations, they agree to share data under clear terms. And in return, they receive a revenue stake. And importantly, they retain control over how their data is used. This model respects intellectual property, democratic values, and transparency. And it shows that innovation and responsibility can go hand in hand. This is what the 21st century collaborations look like to our mind. Mutual benefit, shared governance, and respect for autonomy. So we invest not only financial resources, but also in infrastructure and people. Through initiatives such as EuroHPC and our upcoming AI factory, we lower barriers to access high-performance computing. And this enables small and medium enterprises, researchers, and startups to participate in advanced AI development. Access must not be limited to the few. Innovation must be inclusive. Equally important is human capital. We're expanding data science and AI education, investing in reskilling and promoting data literacy and ethical AI across sectors. Technology without skilled people is simply hardware. Real impact comes from people who understand both the opportunities and the responsibilities. And finally, we must think about scale. Pilot projects are important, but they must grow beyond experimentation. Long-term funding depends on measurable results, and that means focusing on collaboratives, on real societal challenges, healthcare, climate resilience, food security, and education. So let me end by saying that none of this works without interoperability. International standards for data quality, metadata, and technical compatibility are not constraints. They are enablers. Data that cannot connect cannot create value. We must leverage the synergy between data and AI. Open and well-governed data can train AI models to tackle societal challenges, and AI tools can make data more accessible and usable, especially for non-experts. So together they create a virtuous cycle of innovation and impact. The panel discussion today will explore these themes in greater detail. You will hear practical experiences, challenges, and lessons learned. And as you listen, I encourage you to reflect on three questions. One, what can my organization contribute? Two, what value do we want to create? And three, how can we move from isolated efforts to shared ecosystems? So data and AI collaborative succeed when we move from zero-sum thinking to positive-sum outcomes, when we understand that shared prosperity requires shared commitment. So thank you, and I look forward to a productive and inspiring conversation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ambassador, for sharing your insights and setting the stage right in the place. Next, I would like to welcome our next keynote speaker, Frederick Werner. Based in Geneva, Switzerland, Frederick Werner is a recognized leader at the intersection of artificial intelligence, technology, and global development. As the Chief of Strategic Engagement at ITU, the United Nations Specialized Agency for Digital Technologies, and the Chief of Strategy and Operations for AI for Good. Frederick drives initiatives that shapes the future of AI roles in solving humanity's greatest challenges. I would request Frederick to kindly come and deliver your keynote.
Thank you for that kind introduction. Let me begin with a question. What if the last thing us humans ever invent is invention itself? Now, what do I mean by that? So I was speaking with cybersecurity AI expert Roman Yampolsky in New York a few weeks ago, and he said, Fred, what is AI for good? Is it for good or for good? I was like, that's a good question. What do you mean there? And he said, well, for good, meaning beneficial, positive, good, or for good, as in forever. I said, that's actually a very good question. And then he said, what if AI is the last thing that us humans ever invent? And you might agree or disagree with that statement, but I think it's not hard to imagine that future inventions might be invented by AI or with collaboration of AI in one way or another. And if that's the case, we better make sure that if AI is for good, it's actually for good. Now, AI for Good was created by ITU in 2017. And if you think about it, that's an eternity in terms of AI years because AI is moving so fast. And we've really seen AI evolve from the fear and promise and hype of AI, mainly existing in fancy marketing slides, to traditional machine learning for prediction engines. We saw generative AI arriving at around 2023. Yes, last year, the theme of AI for Good Summit unofficially was the rise of the AI agents. And I think we're now entering a zero-click world where AIs are not waiting for our prompts, but they're actually acting on our behalf. And on top of this, we're seeing the physical manifestation of AI in the form of robotics, embodied AI, brain-computer interfaces, space AI, and even quantum computing. So what is AI for good? Well, simply put, it's to unlock AI's potential to serve humanity. And how do we do this? Well, first of all, we can't do this alone. Nobody can. No country, no organization, no company. So that's why we have virtually the entire UN system, 50 plus UN sister agencies as partners of AI for Good. But also the AI experts themselves would say AI is too important to leave to the experts themselves. So great efforts have been made to bring as many different diverse voices to the table, from industry to member states to NGOs to academics to media to young people and everyone in between. So what does AI for Good look like? I actually want to highlight a case that came through our Innovation Factory, which is a year-long AI startup pitching competition. And we had a startup from Estonia that can actually detect the amount of sugar that's in your blood just by the sound of your voice using AI on a phone. Now, why is that important? I mean, that could be a game changer for diabetes, right? Diabetes, it's a global killer. Taking your blood sugar monitoring, it's very inconvenient, it's painful, it's expensive. So this could really, it's a pilot right now, but it could really be a game changer. But at the same time, if AI can tell how much sugar is in your blood, what else can it tell about you? What were you doing last night? Are you tired? Did you have too much wine? Are you paying attention? Are you paying attention? Are you lying? So it's not hard to imagine how it can also be used and abused. So it's not always about what AI could do, but what AI should do. And when we see AI for good, we see many high potential applications, anything from affordable healthcare to education for all, to food security, to clean energy, and disaster response, and everything in between. But how do we know these high potential AI applications work equally well on men or women, on children or the elderly, on persons with different skin colors, persons with disabilities, or in low resource settings where things we take for granted like electricity, 5G, access to cloud data applications. These are actually real concerns. So you can't assume that these are natural reflexes for the fast moving tech and startup industry. I think the track record so far has been we build it and we'll fix it afterwards. But these are things that we think deeply about at AI for Good with all of our partners. So basically, how can you take these high level applications and make sure they scale globally? Well, in Davos a few weeks ago, we launched a flagship report with the United Nations University, and it looked at some AI for good use cases in three different areas. One is GeoAI, so how we can use basically satellite imagery to take the pulse of a planet and help to predict climate, weather, disaster response, and everything. And also, we looked at robotics and use cases for accessibility and healthcare. And also we looked at telecommunications, of course. And we identified 5 pathways on how we can scale AI for good globally. First is access to good data, sovereign data, and how we can share data in a way that's safe, but also responsible and usable. The second is infrastructure and connectivity. Of course, ITU's mission is to connect the world, but a third of the world still remains unconnected. So bridging that gap is very important. The third is skills. When we had our AI global dialogue last year, we had over 100 ministers from 100 countries, and they all basically identified addressing the AI skills gap as a top priority. Doesn't matter if you're a developing country or a developed country. Fourth rather, is governance and standards. And if you look at these fast emerging governance frameworks around the world, I like to think of it as a moving target, and it's not a one size fits all approach. But how can you turn these ambitious words and texts from principles into implementation? And standards is one of those tools, because as you develop standards, you can make sure that you bake in security, safety, human rights, sustainability, and basically make sure that they're inclusive for all. And when businesses start to use AI across borders, whether it's through services and products, then you can have that common sense thinking built into standards, which is one of the ways of implementing these many governance frameworks around the world. And then the last, of course, is creating an AI ecosystem where you have the speed of startups, the scale of governments, but also the basically the academic rigor of academia. So I think these are all of the pieces of the puzzle that need to be addressed if you want to move beyond pilots into scale. And when you're looking at the global south, I think one thing that's encouraging about India is I don't think you need to be the best in AI or have the best model or the largest model, but you can be the best when it comes to diffusion and adoption. And I think India has a very good track record of this when you're looking at digital public infrastructure, digital ID, financial inclusion, digital payments. There's a very good track record at diffusing technology at scale with a very large population. And I'm optimistic that the same thing could be done with AI and that it could even serve as a kind of playbook for the global south and the rest of the world. So with that, I'd like to thank you for your attention and hope you can all join us at the AI for Good Global Summit in Geneva on the 7th to the 10th of July. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Frederick. Those were really, really insightful thoughts that you had presented. After our thoughts from our keynote speakers, we would like to give you a quick glimpse of how Civic Data Lab has been envisaging the data and AI collaboratives. For that, I would like to call forward the CEO and co-founder of Civic Data Lab, Gaurav Gudwani. Gaurav, over to you.
A very good morning, all of you. It's so hard to follow now Ambassador Harry Verwege and Fred Werner's keynote inputs. I think they have set really the ground for what we are gonna unbundle on data and AI collaboratives. So quickly seeing what it may look like in practice. Just raise your hand if you have made 3 new connections in last 2 days. Good job, folks. Good job. Now, how do we sustain these connections on building and co-creating data standards, identifying AI use cases, identifying ways to make these models work in practice? And that's what data and AI collaboratives are truly about. So we have created Civic Data Space, our platform to host data and AI collaboratives at one place. It has components of data exchange, it has the data standards, most at the metadata level as well as sectorial nature. It's open source. It's use case led collaboration. It encourages that. It has AI model registry and it also has open data sets which are freely available for you to scale the work you're doing. And some of our early collaboratives to come on board are some of the pressing needs we are facing in the region. First, as you know, climate and health is one of the major issue which we are facing in the region. Asia Pacific is heating twice as compared to other regions. So how do we get high value data sets related to climate and health at one place, make them interoperable, make them standardized? This is a big bet in India, Indonesia, Philippines, and Thailand, where we have plugged in data sets from the government agencies, civil society partners, innovators, academic institutions, and identifying AI use cases on extreme heat, flood management, air pollution, and some of the other pressing needs of the region. and are fostering collaborations between the stakeholders to share knowledge, share information together. Second one is gender. You have been hearing this across the other sessions as well, and you would hear more about it in this session. Gender and inclusion issues are real when it comes to AI model, and we really need to get data and AI work for gender and inclusion. And for that to happen, we need to bring in data sets which can highlight some of the gender gaps which we are facing in the region, identify use cases which can help progress some of the targets we have set for ourselves for gender and inclusion. And that's another collaborative we have started here. So we don't want to stop here. We want to have more collaboratives come on board on our platform. We want to help you out, figure out how do we adopt more data standards, find other collaboratives, find use cases where all of us can work together and share more knowledge, more work together. So you can scan this QR code and register on the platform, show your interest, and we would work to onboard you soon. So with that, we would move to our first panel. I would bring my colleague Nupura again to introduce the panel.
Thanks a lot, Gaurav. We start with the first panel. The first panel focuses on demystifying data and AI collaborators. This panel is joined by five experts. I would like to call them one by one. The first expert I would like to invite is Ariane Hildebrandt. Ariane is the Director General of the Federal Ministry for Economic Cooperation and Development, Germany. She is responsible for global health, equality of opportunity, digital technologies, and food security. Our second panelist is Anna Tumodar. Apologies for pronouncing it wrong, is the CEO of Creative Commons. She's focused on safeguarding equitable, open access to knowledge while balancing societal considerations regarding creative labor in an age of AI. Next, we have Alexandru Oprunko. Alexander is the UNDP Asia Pacific Regional Innovation Advisor and team leader for innovation and digital, leading the regional innovation and digital team. Next, we have Martin Tisney. Martin is the founder and the chair on the board for Current AI. Martin leads the AI Collaborative, a new philanthropic organization ideated in 2023 to help govern and build artificial intelligence based on democratic values and principles. We have Nasubo, but unfortunately she's stuck in traffic, so she might join in some time. And finally, our moderator, Gaurav Godwani.
Thanks a lot, Nupura. So we have a great first panel. We are going to have another one. So it's going to be a lot of musical chair, which you're going to see today. So thanks a lot, all the esteemed speakers for joining us today. Let's unbundle what are data and AI collaboratives and how can they drive economic growth. I would start with Martin, you first. You have been working on data collaboratives and AI collaboratives for a while. Help us unbundle this term.
Right. Thank you. Thanks very much for having me. We have a lot of panelists. We don't have very much time. I'm just going to make three quick points. The first point I'd like to make is, despite, and actually this is why I was excited to come this morning, despite the focus of this session and this panel, I think we talk very little about data when we talk about AI. And I've been surprised by that. We're always talking about compute, about the importance of compute for artificial intelligence. And I think relatively rarely do we talk about data. Partly, I think it's my surprise comes from the fact that we've forgotten Shoshana Zuboff's caution, which is the degree to which user data is the raw material for artificial intelligence. So that's really my first point, is that when we think about data, we need to think about the governance around it, how it's used for AI, and by and large, that's not the conversation I think that we're having globally. And partly my suspicion is that we've become complacent around it, and we've become too used, especially in social media, to the attention economy and to the advertising business model, and to the fact that fundamentally user data is the raw material for artificial intelligence. If you want to talk to someone who can speak about this much better than I can, I would highly recommend Meredith Whittaker, the president of Signal's work on this. That's my first point. The second one is if and as we're going to focus on data, we need to really unleash a lot more innovation than we have today. Again, I'm really struck by the innovation we've seen in compute, in artificial intelligence over the past 10 years or so. There's been very little innovation in data. I would love to be proven wrong by the panel, by audience members. All of the work that I've heard of, that I've seen over the past 10 or 15 years, different models of data stewardship, systems such as data trusts, where communities can come together under a fiduciary to share data in a controlled environment, I think are great, and I think have actually progressed very little over the past decade when you look at innovation in compute and other settings in AI, and I think that's a huge problem. So from my perspective, for the work we're doing at Current AI and the work that I'm doing at the AI Collaborative, we're really pushing, we're putting financing and effort towards technical innovation when it comes to data, so we can separate personal data from the model, and governance innovation so that we can have different type of data stewardship models to ensure that personal data is actually not only protected but can be used at scale. And this is really what we're pushing for. I think that I'll go even a little bit further on that second point. I hear a lot of people routinely, and I'm sure there'll be many over the course of these few days, who will, in some ways, I think slightly flippantly, say that AI will cure cancer. I don't think AI will cure cancer at all unless we have much better, much more innovative ways of sharing data, sharing patient treatment, outcome data, and sharing genetic data. And I don't think we're anywhere close to that right now. I simply think people don't trust, rightly so, the systems to share such sensitive data. We can have another conversation in terms of AI and cancer. I think there's loads of progress done around detection, but that's because the data is less sensitive. So that's my second point. And then my third point, you were talking about collaboratives in AI broadly. I think it's fantastically important for all of us to focus and to, in some ways, to refocus the AI conversation globally towards collaboration and cooperation rather than competition. So in this forum and following the two fantastic keynotes, I think it's easy for us to think that collaboration is the way. It's not. Right now, competition geopolitically is what's driving AI. It's competition between the States and China. It's competition between different countries. I think we really have to make a big effort and to push for that to be collaborative. And that was the big part of the AI Action Summit last year that I helped organize in Paris. And I'll finish with this last point. When it comes to collaborations and competition, my fear is all the conversation about AI sovereignty gets it all wrong. The sovereignty debate right now is fundamentally about control and about countries aspiring to control the stack at home, which I think is illusory. Effectively, what's needed is collaboration to have a global open source AI stack where countries can share the different benefits and at the same time control data that matters. So those are my 3 points. Thank you for having me.
Thanks a lot, Martin, for setting such a powerful landscape in front of us. Core is to solve for data collaborative and specifically data sharing to make this work. Uh, Now, I would quickly go to Anna. Anna, you have been figuring this out for a while at Creative Commons with amazing licensing structure. Now that we are sensing the struggle to share, what is the way forward?
Well, I think it's actually really encouraging to think about the work you're doing with civic data space and ways people can come together to share data sets under conditions that suit them and for collaboration. Because there's certain data that absolutely should be open, is in the public domain. We're thinking, climate data, weather recordings, sea levels, et cetera, et cetera. Like these are things that are public goods, and there should be a huge effort made capture that data and make it publicly available so that folks can, do research, innovate, help drive towards solutions. But there's other data that is indeed more sensitive beyond the personal data that Martin spoke about, but even when we think about cultural heritage data, for instance. And so I wanted to use that as like a grounding example when we think about how we could potentially conceive of AI and data collaboratives that align both sort of incentives with the public interest. So everybody, most people, I would imagine, in their life have at some point visited a library, been to a museum, maybe even visited their national archives. There is so much information that we have about our cultures, about our languages, about our shared heritage that exists that is not readily available for us in digital format to build on and to learn from today. A huge barrier to this is simply funding. It's really expensive to do high quality digitization of assets, and whether we're talking, physical assets or text or whatever the case may be, that is one of the number one barriers to sharing of cultural heritage. Another barrier is just people, because we don't necessarily know our way around these things. We don't necessarily have the expertise to not just the sort of mechanics of digitization, but like the actual sharing of the materials. Are they under copyright? Are they in the public domain? Are there other considerations that we need to take into account? Is this traditional knowledge? Does it need to be labeled accordingly, etc.? And then the final barrier here, I would say, is sort of the policy environment. There's no shared international or national instruments that encourage this sort of move towards access to heritage. Now you can imagine a private sector corporation coming in and saying, look, it is in our best interests, our market incentives, to get access to high quality data, because therefore we will have a better model, a more representative model. It'll be more useful to the people in the culture that we are trying to serve, et cetera, et cetera. So that's what they need. And what these institutions need is they need funding, they need technical access, they need support so that they can fulfill their public interest missions of sharing this with the public broadly. And so you can imagine a collaboration where there is support for that work so that subsequently the rest of us can benefit from it as well. And I would think sort of your platforms like your Civic Data Spaces, your Hugging Faces, your Mozilla Data Collectives, et cetera, those are great places to think about where you can share these high quality data sets, ideally with shared metadata standards so that the data can all talk to each other, where you can indicate how you want this data to be used. Because again, some data in the public interest belongs in the public domain, should be open for all of us all of the time. And I think we have some interesting sort of climate and science panelists coming up. But as for some of these other more sensitive materials, I think we really need to think innovatively about how we can still get that into the hands of the people to benefit from it.
Thanks a lot, Anna, for sharing those remarks, and thanks a lot for laying the way forward how we can, unlock data sharing for critical scenarios like that. Ariane, quickly coming to you. Um, how is BMZ seeing this as an opportunity for economic cooperation and development? How critical data and AI collaborations are for economic opportunities?
Thank you. Very much important, of course. So much has been said already in the first few minutes in the keynotes and the contributions. So let me say we do have to think about ecosystems for data sharing rather than short projects in development cooperation. Of course, there's a lot of short projects, but this is about ecosystems. Access to data, raw material, as we have heard, is still extremely concentrated. Only 33 countries worldwide have the computing power that is needed to cloud AI in their own territories, and more than 150 countries do not have a single data center. And therefore, of course, for the Global South, this is one of the main challenges, the access. Long-term ecosystems are not created overnight and not created by one actor alone. Therefore, it requires governments and the private sector, civil society, international partners to work together with a shared vision and a joint roadmap. So development cooperation, of course, is always about international cooperation. From our experience in the BMZ, German Ministry for Economic Cooperation and Development, I see 3 building blocks. The first one is open source AI should be the foundation for trust and scale. It allows innovators to build AI solutions without $1 million compute budgets or enormous resource usage. And this is essential for inclusive, sustainable growth and local innovation. One important activity that we as BMZ are supporting is the creation of voice technology for everyone with open data and models. Here in India, we have partnered with the Indian Institute of Science and the government initiative Bashini to create digital public goods for language AI. Second is build shared assets, not isolated solutions. For example, through our Fair Forward initiative, we have shared 55 open data sets as digital public goods and released 16 open AI building blocks. And then third, choose cooperation over competition, as Martin Disney just said. Too often, AI is framed as something like a global arms race, but competition leads to concentration, secrecy, and exclusion. Therefore, this is also why we as BMZ are shaping the global discourse on responsible AI. Together with UNDP, last year, we launched the Hamburg Declaration on Responsible IA for the SDGs, and it now has been endorsed by more than 50 partners across sectors. It provides a shared reference point for fair and inclusive AI development. And so my key message would be, if you want AI to drive economic growth and social good, we must invest in openness, shared ownership, and in people. And we need to treat AI as a global public good, not as a zero-sum game. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Ariane. And we were part of the Hamburg Declaration for AI.
Thank you.
So we really appreciate the effort there. Uh, Quickly coming to Alex, how do we solve for skilling? Skilling remains one of the major issue when we talk about AI and data collaboratives. How UNDP is tackling that?
Yeah, thanks so much, Garth. I think I would like to take a slightly different angle, and I think our role is mostly not to focus on data generation standards, but more focus on the way how we bridge that to decision making. Because scaling will not happen if data is not going to decision making. We are making very clear distinction between data and intelligence. The intelligence is something that gets into the decision making. So, this is very important because if the decision makers are not using data, not deploying, then the things are not going to change, right? So through our work, what we are trying to do, what we are trying to focus on is how we expand using the data and intelligence, the policy choices that the decision makers in the government have. So just to give you a few examples, it can happen at the individual level. We are talking about economic growth. So there are quite a few examples now around where AI and data help at the individual level, micro level, to improve economic productivity. A few years ago, we started working together with our country office here and developed DICRA platform that uses open satellite, is an open platform that uses satellite data imagery, machine learning to improve individual decisions by farmers on climate resilient crops and so forth, right? But take it to a different level. If we can take data to the way how it changes the way institutions make decisions. Fast forward, Indonesia, the recently elected president has 9 programs, all of which multi-billion dollars landing at the village level and are supposed to deal with several important issues, free meals, improved farming, and so forth. So each of those, and I'm going to the collaboration point, each of those is implemented by a different ministry. Those ministries, as we know, in the government, in many public sector institutions, don't talk to each other. Each of the ministries implements multi-billion dollar programs. The data that is, we can use, first of all, use AI to understand where the gaps, where the opportunities for coherence, where the leakages are, and then deal with that through data exchange. In the government, DPIs allows us to, on the one side, to avoid that leakage, to improve efficiency, but importantly, and I'm going back to the point around the choice, it creates additional fiscal space for the government because those resources can be reallocated to other needs, to other policy priorities that the government have. Another critical example where the data important from the collaboration standpoint is with AI and machine learning, we now can get much more inputs from citizens and users into decision making. Again, In several countries, we are deploying a platform called Strive that allows to people to contribute their inputs and provide feedback on the policy planning at the village level. So I think that's another way in which data has a very empowering role. We are shifting the balance in the policy conversation at the local level. So from that perspective, this bridge that is required to link data to decision making, to the creation of choices, is very important. The last bit, Gaurav, before I hand over, what is really important for us is that data is linked to the policy intent of the government. Uh, Everyone heard examples of satellite data used for map out waste flows, how we can improve the waterways in the cities and all that. What is really important is whether this information, this shift in patterns, how we manage waste, can actually contribute to a much bigger transformation, which is, for instance, circular economy, a green transition at the city level. We have a big EU-funded JAB program across Philippines with 20 cities that use data, machine learning to improve the waste management, but that creates resources for them to fund upstream market enterprises and SMEs for the circular economy transition. The same once decision makers see this type of data, this type of intent, they understand how the resources can be relocated. And this is so hugely important in many countries now where the fiscal space is so tight, is that you often don't need to bring additional resources, additional investment or loans from elsewhere. You actually have that public resource. It just needs a particular direction. So this, again, an example where we use data to direct the money through green public procurement to subsidy programs for the government to drive a particular policy intent.
Brilliant. Thanks for sharing that wonderful example. Quickly going to Nasubo. Nasubo, we are running a bit short on time. Maybe in just 2 minutes, explain how Kala is trying to empower collaborations on data and AI in Africa.
Okay, thank you for this opportunity. So Kala is a digital innovation lab. Our work, it cuts across research, building products. So I come with the lens of what it actually means to build AI tools and AI models in Africa. So the one thing that we realize, it's 2 to 3 times more expensive than other languages. And we did a study across 15 low resource languages in Africa. And because of that, it means that we have to also look at data from an economic value, looking at it from the point of view that it's obviously 2 to 3 times more expensive. But then how then can we also, feeding into what Anna mentioned about the historical data, how do we then take that data and ensure that it's well representative for the people in our market. So talking about the economic value of data and what that means in building digital tools and digital platforms for Africa. So that has to be a discussion that we need to look at. Look at also how are we excluded, and how can we ensure that we are well represented. For example, if you look at, let's say, even in data labeling, for African people of African descent, they may decide to take a pseudonym of someone in the Western or even in India populations, because that is very well accepted. But for us, we have to take a pseudonym. So how are we representing ourselves? How do we ensure that even as we are thinking about AI and data collaboratives, we ensure that all voices are well represented, and we ensure that each and every scenario is, put into action. So as Kala, we are bringing the disadvantages or the things that I say times is up. We are bringing that disadvantages into play so that we ensure that each person has a voice, and we are able to represent them equally.
Thank you so much, Nasubo, for sharing that powerful message that we have to ensure everyone finds a representation. Then only these data and AI collaboratives would work. Now we would quickly shift to the next panel. Big round of applause for this panel.
Inputs with us. We move to the next panel. The next panel looks at applying data and AI collaborators for economic growth and social good. I would like to invite all the panelists on stage. First, we have Dr. Agnes Kiraga. Agnes Kiraga leads the data science program at the African Population Health Research Council in Nairobi, Kenya. Next, we have Dr. Cecilia Celesti. Cecilia Celesti is a professor, advisor, and speaker on artificial intelligence, gender, and rights. She's also the co-chair of the AI Credentials Group of the Women for Ethical AI platform, UNESCO. Next, we have Ms. Christine Arab. Christine Arab has dedicated over 25 years to advancing gender equality and women's human rights within the UN system. Next, we have Dr. Kathleen Victor. Kathleen is currently the Scientific Cooperation Officer at the Pasture Network. Then we have Yurin Kim. Dr. Kim has served as the Chief of the Hydrological and Water Resources Division of the World Meteorological Organization since 2019. And we have finally the moderator, Mercedes Forgrasse, who leads the Innovation and Digitalization Workstream at the Partnership in Statistics for Development in the 21st Century, which is Paris 21. Over to you, Mercedes.
There we go. Thank you so much, Nabora. It's a pleasure to be here. I am very aware of time, and I know that I can speak fast, so I will try to speak audibly and eloquently as well. But I think the previous panel we had just now was really good at setting the scene, but I'd like to take the time now to really dive in and think about the applications. We've got a full women panel here who are full experts, much more experts than I am in some really interesting subject matter domains. So I'd like to start with you, Kathleen. Coming from the climate health data nexus and really looking at that type of data in AI collaboratives, what does success look like? What is an effective version of this type of policy collaborative?
Okay, so we work on climate and health, and we look at how climate and climate change and environmental change can impact health. We do that in 18 different countries in the world, and mostly in low and middle income countries. So I'll take it a little bit on from the academic side. And so what we see, we collect data at a quantitative and qualitative level. I would like to go back to the person who was sitting here and who was saying that data is the real important issue, because if you have wrong data and you put it in a good model, you get wrong answers anyway. So for us, the difficulty is to get good data. We have very dispersed data on health and on climate. Even within our community, it is difficult to exchange and to have health data. So what we try to do is to create a community where data and good standardized data can be exchanged. The first question is then, what is standardized data? Even within the academic sector, there is a big discussion on that. And I think that's one of the first things that has to be addressed as well. And what is a good governance on that? So that is, I suppose, creating a good data sharing ecosystem. That's the first thing, and define what is good data. The qualitative data, we do it with the persons on the ground. They go and ask what does heat means for communities. And then they see if that heat is related to a risk and if they included that risk in their model. So the communities, they want return. Working with communities is also understand what is going on and give their feedback on what you're doing. So frugal science is one of the answers we found in that, and include the community as much as possible. And that brings me back to, and then I'll start, to our other stakeholders, which are ministries. Ministries, we are making our models for ministries, and we should not forget that. They should understand that, and they should be able to use them. So put knowledge breakers into the ministries is one of the responses we got into that direction. And I'll stop there.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Now moving over to Huirin, from your perspective, I know you have quite a lot of interesting experience working, especially in the area of science and weather and meteorological spaces. But from your perspective, how can these AI and data collaboratives better integrate the cross-sectoral intelligence from from climate, from water, and also from health.
Thank you so much for your question. First of all, I want to advocate a little bit about WMO. I hope everybody knows about my organization, World Meteorological Organization, which is a UN specialized agency for weather, climate, and water. Some people think because of our name, World Meteorological Organization, they thought we only supporting for the weather and climate or meteorology. No, that's not true. We work for the water hydrological services, especially focused on flood and drought. As you may know, now and even every single year, we face with flood and drought damage and issue. People are dying. Kids are dying. We received just a month ago, I was in Senegal, Dakar, to attend the high preparatory meeting for UN Water Conference 2026. I heard messages from Africa colleagues, and especially kids are dying because they didn't get the information, accurate information in advance. There was no such information, tailored information to community and to the people, last mile approach. Even though the high technique like AI is emerging, that we see that here that we're talking about AI whole this week, but it doesn't sometimes go to the people. That's the critical point. And WMO, our organization, work for that. So as Gaurav mentioned about standardization and also interoperability, open for everyone. That's very critical. Some technology only having dominated by certain countries or certain developed companies. It should be shared with everyone. We are saving people's lives, and that is very critical that what we work. And in WMO, we have a pilot study already working in the 4 countries that how AI can improve flood forecasting result. And also we very much closely working with all our partners, how we can make use of those results to reach out to the people. And I hope we have more opportunity I know that we have very limited time, so please let us know that if we need additional information, I'm happy to provide. And we closely work with all the partners in the world, not only among the UN organization, but private, academy, public, and all the stakeholders. We closely working, trying to save lives and minimize damage from water extreme event. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Wiren. Very useful here. And now I want to move over to you, Christine. Talk to us from the embedding at the design process of data and AI collaboratives from the gender and inclusion perspective.
As the previous panel indicated, AI is only as powerful in many ways as the data that's fed into it. And we have a choice, right, at this stage is if we base it on the existing data that largely is in effect, we'll be replicating centuries of inequality based on gender, based on location, age, what type of group you represent. So it has to be intentional because it does make a difference. It will make a significant difference if we intentionally look at data from the perspective of the eyes of women and girls and what that data and the algorithms that are based around it feed. We have Women has a AI school just in Asia Pacific, and it's been working with women and girls and actually the UN system on helping to govern, design, and responsibly roll out AI from a gender perspective. And what we've learned from that are there's 3 key aspects that have to be considered from if you want to have a gender responsive AI approach, and that is investing, partnership, and scale. Now, when we look at investing, that is about not only making sure that women are part of the design process and have a leadership, but you have to invest in the data and the source of data, and you have to invest in the policies. Now, policies, all of that requires women's leadership, and this is where we're at a disadvantage. Yeah. The second is the South-South cooperation. So, okay. There's no time. Yeah, this is interesting. Okay, so the partnership, please, South-South cooperation, please remember local languages unless you want to compound the discrimination, not just based on gender, but also location and socioeconomic background. And you need to have women's voice embedded in the middle of it. And then you have to build accountability into the infrastructure as you scale it. Thank
Those
you.
are all great points, and I do hope that we can take more time after this panel. I know we have 2 speakers left, and I want to make sure we do give space for you both to really chime in here. But Cecilia, I know that you also work a lot on the gender and social bias aspect of things here. Can you tell us a little bit more about how do we really ensure that ethical safeguards are actually taken into account to make sure that we safeguard those groups?
Thank you so much for your question, and thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. Well, first of all, we have to think in not that just sharing data. We have to think of the idea of ethic governance of the AI. So how can we share data in an inclusive way? This is not for me. I hope so.
5 minutes.
Okay, 5 minutes more. Okay, thank you. So, what can we work with the idea of the ethic governance of the AI while we are sharing this data? First of all, we have to address like 3 main questions in order to try to find this umbrella of the ethic governance of the AI. How, what, and who? How are going to share the data? What kind of data we are going to share, and who is going to be benefit from this sharing? How? We have to guarantee some safeguards in order to ensure that everyone is included. So privacy, first of all, privacy concerns and privacy principles. Secondly, cybersecurity measures. And finally, accountability. Second question, what kind of data we are going to share, and we are going to focus on inclusion and representation of the data sets and AI extractivism that we are going to try to avoid. And finally, the third point is related to who is going to benefit. So we have to focus in the social communities. And as Christine was mentioned before, thinking into about the marginalized communities and the underrepresented groups that has to be part. So sharing data is easy, but doing it ethically is the real challenge. Thank you.
Absolutely. And now, Agnes, I want you to bring us home because I know you work much more on all of these things. You work on population data. From your perspective, how can we really move forward?
Yes, thank you for saving the best for the last. And I represent, I think, 2 collaboratives. One that is focused on data, which is a Countdown 2030. You can check it out on the internet. 23 years of using data for population-based research, 85 countries. And this data is really helping tracking maternal mortality in many of these African countries. The second is an AI collaborative, which is called the Data Science Without Borders project, also running at the African Population and Health Research Center. What we've learned about 23 years of working in population-based research in Africa, relationship infrastructure is what is important. If you can't build relationships that allow data sharing to work closely, it's going to be impossible to have successful data collaboratives. Second is complementarity. Many times as researchers, AI developers, we come in with our own interests. A researcher wants publication. An AI tool developer wants IP on their tools. The community wants a solution. How do we put all this together to have collaboratives that speak to the last mile, like Kim has said? Last mile impact in all these collaboratives is going to be very important. We've heard about skilling. Definitely, data centers are lacking in Africa. But I think there are more nuances to sharing data that we need to look at that are more social than technical. And most of these are really going to drive ethical data sharing and the successful data collaboratives. I think there's a lot of things to say, but in the interest of time, I'll stop there. And just to say it was a great panel, and we look forward to having another one that it allows us to talk more. Yeah.
I agree. I think this is really the first part of this discussion. There's so much more to be said. I think you finished us off really well there, though, really focusing on this community aspect and making sure that everybody is at the table and the sharing that is very important. So please join me in applauding our speakers here today. I know we are at time. I'll let Nupura finish us off. Thank you.
that's beginning soon. So we would connect with all the panelists outside the room. So once again, thank you so much for joining us for this insightful discussion. Thank you.